Hi, everybody. It is Katie Bellamy, she, her, hers, from the Office of Health Promotion and Wellness, here for another installment of Do Not Wait to Get Help. And today we are joined by Gina Nunez from the Dean of Students.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So before we get started with our questions, I went ahead and put the link in the comments, but if everyone could take a minute to check in for the event, and you can also see it below, that would be awesome. So Gina, thank you so much for joining. And if you want to just start us off, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you, and if you could tell us a little bit about your office.
Absolutely. Well, again, I'm so happy to be here today. My name is, again, Gina Nunez. I serve as Assistant Dean of Students in the Dean of Students office. I am a proud double demon, so both of my degrees are from DePaul University. DePaul has played a significant part in my adult life, and I'm really happy to be back and working with students. So it's great to be able to be here today, and I'm looking forward to sharing more about what the Dean of Students can do to support our students.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. I know something when I'm working with students, and I mentioned like, hey, have you reached out to the Dean of Students for help? I know that there's a big like myth or stigma around your office where students think like, wait, I'm not in trouble. Why would I go there? So can you give us a little bit of a perspective on maybe some of those myths, as well as like what are reasons that students would go to the Dean of Students for support?
Yeah, so I think that you are absolutely right. There's some stigma, some myths out there. I think a lot of times when people hear Dean of Students office, they think principal's office. You know, I must be in trouble, or I must have done something wrong to end up in the dean's office, and that is a very small part of what we oversee, and I'll touch on student conduct in a little bit, but in most cases, we are your friends, we're your allies, right? We are here to support you and to advocate on your behalf. So that's definitely one that's a myth I would like to bust. We're not here to, we're not out to get you. We're not here to make sure that, that there are punitive punishments, or that, you come to the office and you get a slap on the wrist and we send you on your way. We are very much, all about working with the students as individuals. And if they show up in our office and are not having the best day, or maybe not, at the highest point in their lives, we'll do our best to work with the student and to make sure that we get them back on track.
Mm-hmm. That's so great to hear. And I know like working with the students that I see, I can definitely like vouch for just how supportive and welcoming and inclusive your office is. And I think even with some of the stigma and the myths out there, I know students like usually go to your office and then feel like, oh my God, I'm so like really relieved, and I'm really glad I reached out for help. Or also just like, I had no idea that I could even receive help for something like that while I'm here.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad to hear that you're getting positive feedback. We also like to see that too. And, like I said, we work with our students as best as possible to make sure that we get them, back on track, or get them, ultimately, we want them to just have an enjoyable and positive experience while they're at DePaul. But yeah, some of the reasons that students might reach out to the Dean of Students, we understand that life happens sometimes, and students aren't, students can't focus just on school. We understand that students have families, and sorry, here's my coworker here.
Yes.
We've got students who have families and job responsibilities and other commitments and priorities that are going on in their life, and we try to understand that and be respectful of that and work with students to work around that. But we understand that sometimes life presents itself in ways that are definitely unexpected, right? Sometimes students have personal crises, or emergencies might arise. Maybe there is a medical or a mental health emergency, or maybe there's a death in the family and the student is impacted in some way, most likely academically, right? They will likely have to miss class. They will likely fall behind in schoolwork. And that's something that, those are some reasons that we might be able to assist with, in those situations.
Sure. And I'll keep asking some questions, but I do just want to let viewers know that if you have any questions for Gina about the Dean of Students office, you can also drop those in the comments and we'll be able to see those and address them. I know you had mentioned before that conduct is one area. Is there anything on that that you wanted to share with the community?
Yeah, so we do oversee the student code of conduct and responsibility. So ultimately, we just want to make sure that everyone is being respectful members of the community. We want everyone to have an enjoyable and positive experience. And you need guidelines and you need policies to be able to do that, to make sure that everyone is kind of on the same page, right? And we know what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in terms of the DePaul community. And we've outlined that in a way that we hope is clear for students. And we hope that students are able to to comply to the best of their ability. And when there is a misunderstanding or sometimes, there's non-compliance, it's our job to look at it and say, question what happened here? What was your thought process? What led to these actions or this behavior? And is this a pattern of behavior? Or was this just a poor choice on, a random night? Or are there some underlying issues or some other red flags that are happening? And at that point, we're able to intervene and get them connected to departments like your office, and get them the resources and support that they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that I really appreciate is that even when it is like conduct or policy violation related, that you all seem to take like a really holistic and educational approach and not like a punitive trying to catch somebody, but that the intent really, like you were saying, the intent is to create like a safe and inclusive community. And so because of that, we need some guidelines. And then when those are I'm hearing you say like when those are not followed, that there's some like education and accountability. That's a very different mindset than like, I'm trying to catch you and punish you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think I mentioned earlier, we work with the students, and we try to remember that they're walking through the door as individuals from, various different walks of life. We don't know what it was, what they've experienced in their life that got them to this point, or why, what their why was. So, still understanding that sometimes people make mistakes, and treating people with respect and dignity, I think, goes a long way. And even if the students sometimes are in the wrong, still treating them as a person and as a member of the DePaul community. They have rights also. So keeping that in mind, like you said, we're not out to get everybody. We're not the drill sergeants or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, from all of those, like it sounds like there's a whole host of reasons that people would reach out to the Dean of Students office.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any like one thing that you want people to know about the Dean of Students office?
Yes. So if we don't have the direct support or the exact resource that you're looking for, we will get you connected to it. So we do have several. We have really great opportunities and resources for students to take advantage of within our office. Like I talked a little bit about, working with faculty members if there's an emergency and letting them know. We'll send an official correspondence asking for some flexibility, or to work with them to excuse some of those absences. We also work with students if there was a very impactful emergency or stressful situation that didn't allow the student to finish a course successfully. So if a student has failed a course, the Dean of Students is able to work with the student individually to go back and retroactively withdraw a student even after the quarter has ended. So that's something that a lot of students don't know about, but it can make or break a difference in your GPA or your graduation timeline. And another is, I've talked a lot about emergency situations and crises, but the Dean of Students office offers what is called the Student Emergency Assistance Fund. And this is something that students are able to take advantage of. There is an application process, but we work with you to kind of get what you need done. Students are able to access it once throughout their tenure at DePaul, but it's not something that they have to pay back. So it's not a loan, and it's not something that will count against you, but it's something that's really there for students who are truly in need.
That's so great to hear. And I'm hearing like a takeaway from all of that for me is that like if a student is not sure if you all can help, that it doesn't hurt to reach out and that maybe there are a lot of like resources and opportunities that another staff or a faculty or a student may not know that's even like available. So
Absolutely.
that's something we say at HBW a lot as well as like reach out. Like maybe you don't have the answer, or maybe it's like, oh, I just don't even think anybody would be able to help me with that. But it doesn't hurt to reach out and see. And maybe if it's not the dean of students or if it's not HBW, we might be able to like link with the resource that can help.
Absolutely. And that happens more often than not. So I always say, don't hesitate, or do not hesitate
That's
to
right.
reach
Yeah.
out. Just go ahead and you never know what you might find out.
Hmm. What would you say is one piece of advice that you would have for new members of the DePaul community? So
Yeah.
whether they're incoming freshmen or transfer students, like what's one piece of advice you would share?
Yeah, and what a year to be a new member of the DePaul community. I know things will look a little different this year, but we are still here for you nonetheless. One piece I would say is, I guess, kind of carrying on what I was just saying from the last question. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out. If it's not the right person who's able to best answer your question, no matter which office, we want to help you. So they'll make sure that you'll be connected to the appropriate office or the appropriate contact. And just another piece of advice as a former DePaul student, put yourself out there, get involved. I know virtually for now, but see what interests you and what find your passion. And how are you going to do that if you are not trying and experiencing new things? So that would be my personal recommendation.
I love that. I think there's so much wisdom in being able to like, okay, I know what my comfort zone is and I know how to push myself like just enough out of it where it's not like a totally big risk, but it's a little bit of risk taking to get out of our comfort zone and like meet new community members and find connections and network and learn new things.
Yeah, I would say I'm still connected with a lot of really great friends from my undergraduate and graduate time at DePaul. So go
I
for
love
it.
that. So meaningful. What is your favorite part of being an assistant dean of students? What do you love the most?
So I love my job, and I love that I get to interact with so many different people. So of course, countless students, and undergraduate, grad, part-time, full-time, international students. I love that, being able to interact with so many different people from so many walks of life, and hearing their stories and trying to understand their journeys. I think is my favorite part. My job is very fast-paced, so I love that. There's it's never boring. There's always someone who needs help. There's always someone who needs support, and I'm happy to be that person.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Yeah, there's no days.
It's meaningful work, and I think that's really important to me. Just professionally, being able to feel that sense of belonging, that sense of community, and really feel that my work is meaningful and fulfilling. And I definitely get that in this position.
Yeah, there's a real sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from Christine, who is interested in your double demon career. What did you study at DePaul?
So both of my degrees are in communication. My master's degree is in intercultural communication.
Awesome. What do you apply to your like current role? Does it relate?
Yeah, I think it does. And it really helps me. And specifically, it was very helpful when we were in person, right? In the office, I was able to understand, I was able to recognize and analyze the students' body language or their nonverbal communication. And I was able to formulate my questions around the types of hints or clues that they were giving me in those types of communication. So I'm trying to adapt a little bit now over Zoom, and it's sometimes a little more difficult when I'm meeting with students over the phone. But yeah, I really do enjoy types of communicating with people, types of communication, and understanding how different cultures, different groups, different communities will communicate not only amongst themselves, but kind of interculturally across those groups, right? And working with students who are, what is it? So millennials, Gen Z, like trying to understand like different social media platforms and how students communicate with each other, and sometimes the pitfalls that come along with that are all just fascinating to me. So yes, a background in communication is definitely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it really helps you maintain like some curiosity and understanding and not falling into any like judgmental pitfalls or rigid thinking.
Yeah, I think that really helps, especially in this line of work, right? Not jumping to conclusions or coming in with a judgmental or like a bias. I think it's really helpful to just listen a lot of times from students' perspectives. Having someone to just actually like actively listen and try to understand where it is that they're coming from or what they've experienced.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned like it's a very fast-paced role, and working in the dean of students office, there is a lot of like you encounter a lot of students in crisis and students who are not feeling so great. And we know as people who help other people, it's important that we also help ourselves. So with that in mind, what is your favorite way to practice self-care?
My favorite way. So we like to go on walks. This is Judge, my little
Hi,
coworker.
Judge.
So getting out in the fresh air, and sometimes I know we're going into fall. Sometimes the rain and the cool air, but it's nice to not be stuck inside, to not be stuck behind a screen. I've also really gotten into biking recently, so I think sitting down at a laptop for several hours a day can be kind of draining. So trying to find ways to get out and moving, I think are really important ways, for me at least, to practice self-care. But I also enjoy a good Netflix binge. To just shut my mind off and not worry about email or not worry about like social media or anything like that. I also like to eat some good food.
Have been doing any quarantine cooking?
Not at all. I've been doing some baking. I prefer to bake, but I'm admittedly not the best cook.
Well, we all got to find our channels, right? It sounds like your self-care is like pretty varied with, sometimes it is that like shut off distraction, and sometimes it's more active, like moving your body.
Yeah, it depends on my mood.
Christine wants to know what's any Netflix recommendations?
Oh my gosh. So let's see. I know they recently took off Friends. That was like my go-to, because it was like, even if I was doing something else, it was nice to have something familiar in the background. But let's see, what have I watched recently? I think some of them are too embarrassing to admit.
Sure, I'll share mine. I just and this is embarrassing at how quickly I got through it, but I just watched the final season of The Good Place.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, the last season's up on Netflix, so there you go. If you didn't know that yet.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I think I'm a couple seasons behind, but I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, it's cute. So how can students stay in touch? So Christine asked if you all have any social media platforms, as well as like if students might need your support, how can they reach out to the Dean of Students office?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. I should have mentioned that when we first got started. But so we are located on the Lincoln Park campus in the Student Center on the 3rd floor in Suite 307. And if you just do a quick search on the DePaul website for Dean of Students, our webpage will pop up, and you'll see a little button to join our virtual office, which is still available for all normal business hours. We don't currently have social media platforms, only because I don't know that the special circumstances and emergency situations that we work with would likely be broadcast on social media. So we have kind of a low profile on social media, but we're super accessible. Feel free to call us. So all of our contact information is listed on our webpage.
Awesome. And that's go.depaul.edu/DOS?
Yes. Hmm.
Cool. Great. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about your office, your role, or yourself that feels important to let our community know about?
I mean, this has been really great, and I appreciate all your questions, but I just wanted to reiterate that we're here for students. We're here to support you. I understand that things aren't always, sunshine and roses, and things happen in life sometimes that kind of get us sidetracked, and that's okay. And, we're here to support you um, through it.
Awesome. So I'm going to throw up, there is the website to get in touch with the Dean of Students or to learn more. And of course, you can always stay in touch with HPW. There is our email address, phone number. We are on social media. And then you can always find us on D-Hub as well and follow us there to stay in touch with all of our workshops and events. Before we log off, we do have one more really great question. And since we do have a little bit more time, I do want to share it. Do you have any tips on balancing schoolwork with self-care?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I don't know that I have been I can't consider myself an expert at multitasking, but I hear that that is good. I tend to want to just focus on one thing at a time. But I would say, just what helps me is writing everything down in my calendar. If I don't write it down, I will likely forget about it or it will get pushed to the wayside. So writing down, even if it's just a quick check-in, like a 5-minute check-in. Maybe your favorite type of self-care is talking to your mom on the phone or talking to, your friend back from school, from high school. So, squeezing in some time in between classes, or if it's, getting a quick snack or like a cupcake or something. Does that count as self-care if it's not a healthy snack?
I always, I'm a big fan of intuitive eating. So if it's feeling aligned in the moment, I say, yeah.
But yeah, sneaking things in when you do have time, I think really paying attention to your time management will ultimately, it'll help lessen some of the feeling of being overwhelmed when you're able to kind of see everything clearly and outlined. I've always been a fan of to-do lists, and I feel so much more productive once I'm able to cross things off or add a little check mark. And whether that is writing it down or plugging it in your phone, I think that DePaul students do a really great job of that because our classes move so much more quickly on the quarter system than they do in the semester system. And, balancing family life and work life and, student life, plus, all the other things. I think DePaul students are experts in it. So good luck, and I hope you have an excellent autumn quarter.
Yeah, I think those are awesome tips. And just to kind of summarize and like add my 2 cents onto that, I think a lot of what you're saying, Gina, is so spot on with what I usually recommend. And I think part of I think sometimes we think of ourselves like I'm a student and then I have self-care, or I'm an employee and then I have self-care. So something I'm not an expert in it yet, still trying to practice what I preach, but remembering that like we are whole and holistic. And so showing up and not looking at them as two separate things, but like, how can I practice self-care while I'm doing schoolwork and integrating them? And then I think also what you were speaking on is like broadening our definition of what counts as self-care. So although I would love to be able to like have the finances and time to be able to get like an hour-and-a-half massage every day, like that's just not feasible. And so sometimes my self-care looks like a quick stretch and 3 deep breaths before going into my next meeting or before continuing on with work. So I think just to add on to that of like also remembering that sometimes self-care isn't glamorous, and sometimes it is like, how much water are you drinking? And like you said, calling your mom or calling a friend, or closing your eyes for 30 seconds before diving back in. So looking at some proactive and preventive tips as well. I hope that helps. So thank you so much for joining us, Gina. I know this was super helpful for me, and I hope helpful for our DePaul community to learn a little bit more about you and about the Dean of Students office. And of course, as always, do not wait to get help. Reach out to HBW, reach out to the Dean of Students, even if you're not sure if we can help or you're not exactly sure what you need. That's part of why we're here and why you have access to these awesome resources during your time. So reach out, stay in touch, and also join us next week for another installment of Do Not Wait to Get Help. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.